easy and personalised content on every sport. Download it now. Boyle Sports. Time to play.
I'm prepared to do anything I can to play for my country again.
Do it then. What about your start to the game?
It wasn't bad, was it?
Why should an honest answer be a mistake?
How can a modern day manager not have a mobile phone?
Why should he?
So it's a football show featuring Tim Vickery, which is always a wonderful thing. He'll be giving us the Copa Libertadores latest, a 2-2 draw between Buenos Aires city rivals Boca and River.
Good match that Sunday.
So I hear.
I was going to say Saturday, but obviously it was held over for 24 hours. Really enjoyable. You kind of expecting these things that it might be cagey, especially with two teams that are pretty familiar with each other, but nice open flowing football, 4 goals, load of atmosphere at the Bombonera. It was a class occasion.
Hello, Richie McCormick, for the podcast listeners. You're helping me out for the first 15-20 minutes or so.
Oh yeah, God knows you need it.
Interesting to note, actually, it's just hit me. So
go on.
You were in studio Monday, we were doing the news round. I said to you briefly, as we're in the news, did you watch the Manchester Derby? You said no, and yet you go and watch the Copa Libertadores final, you absolute hipster.
Total hipster.
That is shameless.
It was on Free Sports, Joe, I'm not going to lie.
Free Sports?
Free Sports, which is like an offshoot of Premier Sports as far as I know, but it was free for basically anybody who has a basic Sky viewership package. And God knows mine is basically just based around the kids' packages.
Do I have Free Sports?
Do you have Sky?
I have Sky through Virgin. Obviously.
I don't know. This is the honest answer to that.
Okay, well, we'll move on. So Tim Vickery will fill us in on that game and how he sees the second leg going. And also, there are a raft of friendlies, as you might imagine, on over the next few days. One that caught my eye is Brazil against Uruguay at the Emirates. And memories of 1950, one of the great iconic matches.
It's possibly something that you can put to Tim, because obviously it has that subtext of what was a de facto final of that World Cup.
Yeah.
But
good,
how
good knowledge.
There you go.
Good knowledge. It was a round robin.
Yeah.
But it was, as you say, the de facto final.
I think Brazil only needed a draw, was it, and ended up losing?
Yeah, avoid defeat. Yeah. This is top knowledge.
There you go. But I'd be interested to hear, because this is obviously a regular occurrence for Brazil, for Argentina, and for a number of others. So Nigeria, I suppose you could throw into that as well. There are a couple of African teams that do it as well. How they play a lot of, if not all of their friendlies, away from their native country. And I wonder how the natives feel about being ripped of the ability to see their national team up close and possibly slightly cheaper than you would have done in a CONMEBOL qualifier, etc.
It's a fair point. I'll certainly put that to Tim. He's on the way very shortly. So that's Brazil-Uruguay. I'm sure most of you are very familiar with the story. It was the thing that was most thrown around in 2014 after that Germany whopping of Brazil, that really not since the Uruguay game in 1950 had things been so bad. The agony of the Maracanã was generally what the game was called, the Maracanazo.
Yeah, there was a feeling, because they played in the Olympic final, was it 2 years later? I was at it, but there was definitely a sense around then that although clearly the Olympics was a lesser tournament, that they were exercising some ghosts, particularly with the likes of Neymar and Gabriel Jesus playing in that side, that they were exercising some ghosts from 2 years prior by actually performing well, performing as a unit and winning that damn tournament. And you could sense the relief when they won on penalties that night, very much so. Uruguay
and Brazil had played in the Copa America the year before. Brazil whopped them 5-1. They were the form team throughout the tournament. They were at home. It was in Uruguay. It was in Rio. 200,000 people through the gates.
Good Lord.
And actually 200,000 people, not like Thomond Park in 1978 or anything, but actually 200,000.
That's 250,000 of that, Joe.
Yeah. O Mundo, the paper, printed an early edition with a picture of the Brazilian football team. These are the world champions. Yeah. Rumour has it, this is my best, my favourite rumour of 1950, that the Uruguay captain, Obafemi Varela, you're welcome.
Spot the man who spent a week in Brazil.
Yeah. Fredge. That's what I took on from.
Well, listen, I knew when they threw in Omunjo, we were on safe ground.
Varela apparently bought as many copies as he could of Omunjo, laid them on his bathroom floor and encouraged teammates to urinate on them.
The ramification, when you think about it, the ramifications for that result in particular are huge. When you think about Pele, like one of the famous Pele quotes is that he watched that game, I think, with his dad, and he saw his dad crying at the end of it, and he promised his dad that he would go and win a World Cup for Brazil. And a mere 8 years later, as an elfin 17-year-old in Sweden, he helped them do just that, which is just a fantastic image. The Pele, the greatest player of all time potentially, is sitting at home upset at his father being upset because you don't like to see your dad cry. That's something you're never able for. And he goes on and wins the World Cup for him. That's rather brilliant.
Yeah. I'm torn though. Is it just the kind of guff that Pele comes out with, you know?
Well, you give him enough money, they'll say, aren't they?
It's
like me.
Yeah.
On a grander scale.
Literally like you. So before we get to Tim Vickery then, and Stephanie Roach, certainly we were on to her earlier on this afternoon, and we're certainly hoping to talk to her. She's obviously made the move over to Serie A, Women's Serie A in Florence. She may be a bit delayed getting home, so if we don't get to her this evening, we'll certainly speak to her over the next few days. So Thursday's friendly against Northern Ireland is fast approaching. Michael O'Neill is talking about the two sides being in a very similar situation today. Northern Ireland have won just 2 of their last 11 games. Martin O'Neill and Ireland have won just 1 of their last 9. Martin's squad is in transition like ours, said Michael. I think Shane Long not being available to them is a blow. They're an incredibly hard-working team. Interestingly, with Northern Ireland, the reason they are suffering is they're 1 step ahead of us in the issue of scoring goals. We can't create any chances. Northern Ireland are creating lots of chances. In their last 3 Nations League games, I was reading, they created 46 chances, but have only scored 1 goal from 46 chances.
I was watching their game against Bosnia recently.
Yeah.
They're playing at Windsor Park, and Windsor Park was bouncing. It was a Saturday afternoon.
It's another hipster choice from you, I would say.
Yeah, they are. And they do create a lot of chances. They do get the ball forward. They're able to play the ball about. They're able to get the ball wide. They're able to get the ball into the box. But sadly, they're lacking any kind of finishing touch.
Well, 15 chances a game on average. So that's their situation.
I'd envy them at this stage. When you look at the we've 6 forwards in our squad for these, and this is including Michael Obafemi, for these 2 games, and between them, they've 1 goal.
Yeah.
And that's Aidan O'Brien's.
Yeah. Someone was making the point, I think it was Dan, I can't remember who, but Martin often wistfully talks about Robbie Keane and what he would give to have Robbie Keane.
He keeps
But Robbie Keane wouldn't score if there's no chances created.
He keeps coming up.
But even what can Robbie Keane do?
But Robbie Keane, one of the main criticisms of Robbie Keane, and certainly in the middle part of his career for Ireland, was that he was almost trying to do too much. And there is a sense that Robbie Keane might have scored more, were he not on several occasions asked to come out wide and asked to come deep and win the ball in areas where it wasn't necessarily his business to try and win the ball, but he was so desperate to try and create something and anything that he'd have to go and create those chances and openings for himself.
Maybe. I felt he got much better service than our current Irish strike force are getting, that's for sure though. You Damien Duff on the side. That alone.
That'll help.
Improves things.
That'll help.
So much of tomorrow night is about Glenn Whelan. He will be winning his 85th cap, Aston Villa now. He's played in the Euros obviously in 2012 and 2016. And he made a rare appearance in front of the media. Glenn Whelan, I think, partially out of shyness and just not having much time for the general media.
We're an awful set.
Side of the game. Is part of it, but I think also word got back to him fairly quickly that he was much maligned in the press and on television, and maybe just thought, you know what, I'm not too bothered, because the word always came back actually, or sometimes came back from the lads who were obviously at Premier League games of the weekend, that Glenn Whelan was not media shy necessarily, and he would stop and talk to the Stoke lads that he recognised, but then maybe was a bit less inclined to stop with the Irish media, and this is probably the reason why. But he made a rare appearance, and I guess he was in reflective mode. He said he's not retiring from international football, and yet sort of said it's probably his last game, so it was kind of put to him, well, if you're not retiring, what are the reasons you feel this will be your last game, or what conversations have you had with Martin about why this might be your last game?
No, I think, like I said, the retirement thing is you're dead and buried and you're done. Obviously the manager over the last 12 months or so was trying to bed new lads in, and obviously that's the way Ireland are going, so I'm more than happy for that. I think these lads have waited a long time. They need some game time and to get some caps under the belt. But I think for me now, obviously looking at it, the next couple of years, now if we hopefully do qualify, so I think for me then I'll be 36, 37. So I think that's way off. But I mean retirement as in, I don't know what you do, put it down on paper and not being able to be picked again. I'd never do, but I know tomorrow's probably going to be the last time we play for the country.
If you think back to your debut 10 years ago, what do you remember about you as a player then, your feelings and your thoughts when you were about to make your Ireland debut, which is now 84 games ago? Yeah, like I said, to get one, it's obviously now a great achievement for myself, who's, well, I'd never ever thought that I'd get 85. So I think if you speak to any player who comes in, now it's a massive achievement for wherever to get in international football. So obviously Serbia was the first game. Now I think I've been quite lucky to play in now some good games and some top games. What sort of words would you use to describe how you'd be feeling, maybe national anthem time and when you're walking out with your little fella tomorrow? I'm going to treat it like any other game. Now going into it, speaking to the lads training today, I think it's like, don't worry about me, it's about going out and getting
the right performance and right results. So now other stuff like that'll happen. But now we're going into the game to win the game and taking it as serious as ever.
You've obviously watched Ireland as, you know, a fan as such for the last year. You're going to play tomorrow and then you'll become a fan again. What do you make of where we are at the moment in terms of maybe results in the last year haven't been great, but we're going into a new campaign for the Euros and hopefully to go for that again?
Yeah, no, it's been difficult. Obviously the results haven't been right, but I think if you see with the players who've come in, obviously there's been a lot of lads who've got a lot of experience, who've dropped out of 12 months, and it takes a bit of time. But now if you see what the manager's trying to do and bedding these players in and getting them calves, I think it's time. But like I said, results have been a little bit difficult, but when has Ireland ever made it easy? So now hopefully, like I said, we'll kick on tomorrow and hopefully on against the Danes now, get right result and pick up again.
There you go, being uber professional, Glenn Whelan. He was saying as well later on in the press conference, the phone hasn't stopped ringing this week. There are people coming from everywhere. My little lad is going to be mascot. He's been getting his football boots and new kit ready all week.
Stop now, you're going to break my heart.
My family are going to be there. So it's going to be an emotional time. I'll try to enjoy it as much as I can. The older I get, the more I appreciate playing for Ireland. There have been great times. So he was in reflective mode. I think it's a nice send-off for him to get. Like,
you can see his point there when he's talking about he doesn't want to mention retirement. Like, clearly in his head, he sees an injury crisis that strikes down 15 midfielders, and suddenly Glenn's getting the call, can you come into the squad? We need to pad this out a little bit, and then maybe need somebody for the bench. And he's never ever going to turn that down. So from his point of view, while he's still fit and kicking for Aston Villa, sure, why not?
Yeah, he's dead right. I mean, I think if we're being brutally honest, which is kind of what we're paid to do at times, then his legs had kind of gone a little bit, and it was noticeable in certain pockets. If he sometimes it fell on him to cover between a full-back and a centre half, and he was trying to run down a channel against some nippy winger. He didn't like being there, but he was still very experienced and could do a job when needs be. So he's dead right not to retire.
He's a victim of the two managers, essentially the two managers that he's played under, because the two managers that he's played under were both very conservative managers, and both asked him to do a job based on conservatism, which was to hold what we have, if we have anything at all, don't concede, don't do anything silly, don't do anything sloppy, and just make sure that we get out of this with at least a draw.
I mean, there's an argument that suited him. He certainly got on the ball a bit more at Stoke. We would see him in the Premier League getting on the ball a bit more than he did for Ireland for whatever reason.
Which is a side that were basically the paragon of conservatism in the Premier League.
Yeah.
So it kind of shows you where we were in terms of our approach for the last few years.
Yeah.
That he gets maligned for doing a slightly less expansive job than he was doing at club level.
Yeah, no, he's had a great career. There's a good piece in the Mail on Sunday about David Sneyd. I was mentioning it in the news round, which is worth checking out. Dave talks to lots of people who kind of played with him, including Willow Flood, who revealed that at Man City his nickname was McAngry. Glenn Whelan had a big angry head on it. Was the
also the name of probably a spicy burger, which is a limited edition McDonald's.
Yes. So Martin O'Neill then, he was sitting beside Glenn Whelan today, and he was asked if Glenn Whelan's going to be a big loss to the dressing room.
He will lead the side out, and he will captain the team. I feel he's deserved that, and I think it's 85th cap.
It will be, yeah.
85th cap, which is no mean feat. Really brilliant. During my time, I thought that despite the fact that he is seemingly, pretty quiet lad in many aspects, he is. I thought he led the team. He was captain of the side as well too, under me. Had a really good time before that under Giovanni, and in I think now my 5 years here, he's missed out the last year. Just getting on a wee bit in age, and. But honestly, he's really been excellent. We haven't. We've had the occasional difference of opinion, and I've obviously been right. And as a manager, but no. Overall, I've got great respect for him.
God, he loves pointing out that he's fallen out with his players on a regular basis, O'Neill, doesn't he?
I think post the Harry Arter situation, he's keen to remind everyone that this is perfectly normal. This happens all the time.
Rouse.
Will he be missed? Yes, but he hasn't been in a squad for a year either.
People are going to go, Glenn Whelan's back, all right.
Yeah, so he's been out of the setup for a year, but I think it's an okay gesture for sure to bring Glenn Whelan back for one evening. The Obafemi situation is probably sitting less easily with people, so the short version, Michael Obafemi, born in Dublin to Nigerian parents, spent a lot of his youth then in England, has made his debut for Southampton in the Premier League, is qualified to play for Ireland, England and Nigeria. There was talk a while back that Nigeria were interested in. He's played with the Irish underage system right the way through. And so he's in the squad, and it seems Martin O'Neill has brought him into the squad, and he quite possibly and probably will see game time tomorrow. But Obafemi is not, it seems, yet ready to commit to playing against Denmark, which would mean he would be committed to Ireland for the rest of his career. Hence questions about whether or not this is a great way to hand out a cap under these circumstances. Some people saying it demeans the cap. There are others who are being overlooked who would absolutely kill for a cap and kill for the chance to make a statement for years ahead. So here's O'Neill speaking about it. Michael Obafemi, whether he's spoken to Obafemi's parents about representing Ireland.
I haven't spoken to his parents, but I have spoken to him, and I think that he's enjoyed the training. It's been really good. He's done very well as well, too. I think Glenn would agree with me. Very well in the training. He's settled in nicely. I think he's really enjoyed it. But I think in terms of decisions for tying him down, I think that's a bit of a distance off. I think he has got things to think about, like everything else, and I certainly would not be rushing him. And that was my point to him. So yeah, as I said to you, I think a couple of days ago, that if he come in, rushed in and said, yeah, this is exactly what I want to do, fine with it, then that's a different issue. But I want the people obviously to want to play for us for a start, and I want them to be right for the rest of their time.
So fair to say that he won't be going to Denmark then?
At this minute, unless we have heard anything to the contrary, no, he wouldn't do that.
At best, the situation is a bit misguided on O'Neill's behalf, and at worst, it's a pretty cynical play, given the Rice situation and how that's gone or is going. To bring in a player who has 3 different options in terms of where they could go in terms of international football, to bring them on board, to kind of show them around, possibly give them a cap in a friendly. It stinks when you see that there are other players who are, I'm not saying more deserving, but there are other players who are further down the food chain, or that, in terms of their ability to step up and into the senior squad. Like mentioned Aaron Connolly in the news round earlier on, scored 8 goals at under 23 level in the Premier League. He's on the verge of a breakthrough at Brighton. He's done really, really well. Adam Ida is another one who's performed for the Irish underage sides over the course of the last 2-3 years and has scored nearly as many goals as Connolly in the sub version of the Premier League. And again, these 2 players aren't getting a sniff, and instead it's not even the Obafemi issue I have a deal with now at this stage. It's when you go down to picking League One and Championship strikers that are barely getting the game down there instead of those 2. I mean, if you're going to go with youth that's actually performing. Don't go with youth that you're hedging your bets on.
I suppose it comes down to how much you value a cap as a supporter. Is it something where you look at the situation and you think, well, this guy is potentially going to be a player for Ireland for the next decade, so you know what, no one's going to remember this friendly in 10 years. What harm? Give him a cap. Or there may be the argument that a cap is a huge honour. Like, it's a huge thing to play for the country, to represent the country, representing everybody in Irish football. And do we want to just throw that around like confetti in the hope that, it courts a player who is in 2 minds about representing the country? I can sort of understand both viewpoints. I would lean more towards being uncomfortable with it. I don't think it's ideal when there are other Irish players who might love the opportunity, who might be vaguely at a level where they could play for the country.
But you're grand with the Whelan situation tomorrow. I know it's very different, the circumstances, but again, Whelan's been given a cap to be given a cap.
No,
tomorrow.
It's a fair argument. I'm more grand with the Whelan situation. Kenny Cunningham was in here a couple of weeks ago, and in fairness to him, he said nothing against Glenn Whelan whatsoever. He's been great. He likened it to the Rooney situation. He said, maybe I'd be a bit more comfortable if Glenn Whelan came back and was introduced to the crowd before the game or at half-time with his family and got a send-off that way as opposed to a cap. But it's not something anyone wants to make a big deal out of, and I think people are okay with that. So
bring him on for the last 10-15.
Or maybe something like that, yeah. I'm certainly more grand with the Whelan situation. I just think it will leave a bad taste if Obafemi declares for England or Nigeria.
More likely Nigeria.
Yeah.
If reports to be believed, they've made overtures already. I don't think he's on England's radar in terms of strikers.
Doesn't seem that way. It sets a precedent as well. Is this now going to become a thing where there are duly qualified nationalities, teenage players? Are we going to bring them in, give a raft of friendly appearances in the hope that it persuades them?
Well,
I'm all for courting, by the way. I don't think we should sit here and say, well,
that's the thing.
If they want to play for Ireland, then
they should
come and play for Ireland. I think O'Neill can go and meet with Obafemi. I think he can go and meet with Obafemi's family. I think he can even maybe show him around or have him over to Abbottstown or something, whatever it needs to do. I think you can show a bit of love for sure.
The warning light for this week was
given a cap is an extra step. Like a cap is a big thing.
The warning light for this week was when O'Neill was asked on today's Thursday, it was Tuesday when you named the squad. Have you spoken to him about his international intentions? And he said, no, I'm going to speak to him this week. Like I would have said he possibly should have had that conversation before before bringing Obafemi over. Before he gets on the plane on Sunday night, at least know where you stand with him. Don't bring him over and then have the conversation and then be backtracked by Thursday to say, yeah, you know what, I don't think we can bring him to Denmark because he's still not sure himself. It makes O'Neill look slightly weak in terms of his managerial outlook and how he's playing these situations. Like as we mentioned, underage players do flip between, if they do have dual or triple nationalities, they do flip between international setups, and that's deemed okay. And of course we know the under-21s is your cut-off from that point on, but let them do that. He's still of an age where we do have necessarily a bit of wiggle room. I know we're short of strikers, as I mentioned earlier, but there are others there that are the same age and performing better than him.
It would certainly be a lot cleaner if he was here and had played all the way through, which he has, and knew he wanted to play for Ireland for sure. So I think the last point to finish on is this is not a banging the table conversation. I hope
absolutely not.
Come across like that. And the one thing you don't want, and from O'Neill's point of view, it would backfire spectacularly if it became a big talking point this week and was back-page news. And it's obviously come up in press conferences. We're playing you the audio today. It'll be in the papers. It's on the radio now. You don't want a young player like Michael Obafemi looking around saying, oh God, I'm in the middle of a storm here. You know, and he's perfectly entitled to take the invitation. He's perfectly entitled to come over, perfectly entitled to play against Northern Ireland, and probably still perfectly entitled from his point of view to still weigh up his future. It's more about how we're treating the situation. I think that's kind of the issue. So we'll see how it plays out over the next couple of days. The last clip then is Matt Doherty's out. So Richie mentioned in the headlines Matt Doherty has a facial injury. So is that going to change the team shape, or is that a bit of a blow?
Yes, it's a blow obviously to us, and a blow to him as well too. And but we'll make some adjustments along the way. It might change formations for us, things like that. But I think, you know, in that sort of position we have, we're pretty well, we're as strong as we'll ever be, with Seamus coming back, and obviously Cyrus Christie being able to play in a number of positions for us. So the blow is softened because of that.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, if there's one thing we've got, Richie, it's right backs.
Yeah, we've always had. When you think of the days of the likes of Alan Mabry, who would probably walk into an international setup now, being like the third or fourth choice right back. Fourth choice, Juan Foyth. Yeah, we've always had full-backs. God bless Ireland for that. I think it was Keith was sitting here yesterday in your absence and was saying, you know, if Matt is out, then we're likely to go back to a back four, and he'd hate actually to see that, because we've worked on a back three and tried to make this work for the past while, and although the likes of John Egan might necessarily be comfortable with it, there's a sense of regression and just trying to squeeze in a player for the sake of a system in Matt Doherty now. If this is the case that he's out and they're going back to a back four, just, I don't know, seems a little off to me.
Okay. We're going to take a short break. Today is the 15th, on November 16th, so Wales-Denmark is on the 16th, by the way, on the Friday, if you're looking out for that. As is Brazil-Uruguay at the Emirates in a friendly. We're talking to Tim Vickery next.
Hi, I'm Mick McCarthy, and I'm second
Off the Ball.
In association with the faster-than-ever Boyle Sports app, with hundreds of pre-live and in-play football markets. Download it now. Boyle Sports. Time to play.
News Talk and UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School are offering you a chance to win an MBA scholarship worth up to €34,500. If you're ready to take the next step in your career, simply go to newstalk.com/Smurfit for details on how you could be one step closer to joining one of the world's leading MBA courses. Win your MBA scholarship with News Talk, thanks to UCD Michael Smurfit Graduate Business School. Business imagined better together. See newstalk.com/Smurfit.
Stock up at Dunnes Stores. Cadbury Roses and Heroes Tubs, biscuit assortments, Tato Box crisps, and selected Club and Pepsi 18 packs. All only €5 each. And get 2 for €50 on beer slabs, including Heineken and Guinness. Save again with our €10 off every €50 grocery voucher. Dunnes Stores, always better value. Please drink sensibly. Terms and conditions apply. See online for details. Minimum spend required.
What's better than Black Friday prices? Getting Black Friday prices right now. At Curry's PC World, nobody beats our prices. Fact. Save up to €600 on big name, big screen 4K smart TVs like Samsung, LG, Sony and Panasonic. We've 32-inch smart TVs from just €189 and save €70 on this heart tracking Fitbit at just €119, our lowest ever price. Sorry other stores, these are the prices you're going to have to match. Good luck. You'd be crazy to shop anywhere else because at Curry's PC World, we help you get it right.
There's only one phrase that comes to mind when you first see the all-new Lexus ES. Bold elegance. The phrase perfectly captures what this luxury saloon represents. Brave design meets supreme comfort, powered by our self-charging hybrid and enhanced by cutting-edge Lexus Safety System Plus, making the ES ready for the future. You see? Bold elegance. Preview the all-new ES at lexus.ie or your Lexus retailer. Lexus. Experience amazing.
Well, the night of the pavilions is going to be our most glamorous night yet. On Thursday, the 15th of November, you'll find all the latest high-end fashion, food and plenty of bargains and beauty essentials. It really will be a night to remember. And with 2 hours free parking and only a short drive on the M1, you can treat everybody to the red carpet. Visit pavilions.ie.
Football Index is reinventing football betting. You can buy and sell the world's top players. Their value may go up and down, but it's not over with the final whistle like a regular bet. Football Index, reinventing football betting.
Start building your portfolio today at footballindex.co.uk or download the app now. New customers only, minimum deposit and conditions apply. Gamble responsibly.
Some bus routes in Dublin are now operated by Go Ahead Ireland on behalf of Transport for Ireland. So if you take the 184, 185, 111, 45A, 59, 63 or 75, keep an eye out for the new look buses. On board it'll be business as usual, with the same fares and TFI Leap Card, free travel pass, Dublin Bus Rambler, monthly and annual tax saver tickets, all valid on these services. For real-time service information, download our TFI Real-Time Ireland and Journey Planner apps. For more information, visit transportforireland.ie.
Off the Ball. This is News Talk.
Now, it's always a good thing when Tim Vickery's on the line. Tim Vickery, you're on the line.
I am indeed, yeah, hanging on the line. Don't keep me hanging on the telephone.
Never.
I'm not Deborah Harry.
So, a few bits and bobs to get to. We have Brazil-Uruguay, which always reminds us of 1950. And then we have Copa Libertadores latest. So, 2-2. Boca against River. Delayed, obviously, with that deluge on the Saturday. I hear this 2-2 game was a very, very good game, not some kind of cagey, don't want to make a mistake type game.
No, it was terrific, and it was so much better than anyone had expected. And everyone was kind of anticipating a dramatic and titanic struggle, but exactly that. No one wanting to make the mistake. And especially you put yourself in the position of the players. You know, it's a sleepless night on Friday night before the biggest game ever in the history of one of the biggest, if not the biggest rivalry in world football. Get themselves all keyed up. Sorry, lads, rain stop play. You got to come back tomorrow and do it all again. And so in the circumstances, you were even less optimistic of a good spectacle. But it was terrific. It was open. It fluctuated. And the best comparison I could make, I think, it was a little bit like the ebbs and flows you get in a 5-day test match condensed into 90 minutes. So it was great, and it's really whetted the appetite for the return game on Saturday week because there's nothing after that. At the end of the 90 or maybe 120, maybe penalties, one team will be champion and the other will be on the end of bragging rights, on the wrong end of bragging rights forever and ever and ever. Maybe the second leg will be more cagey, but certainly the first leg was great spectacle and a really terrific advert for the drama of South American football.
We're talking about one of the great rivalries in football, Buenos Aires, River and Boca. It's the first time in the 58-year history of the Copa Libertadores that they've met in the final. What has the general build-up or atmosphere or tone been like between the two sides?
Well, it's a country on the verge of a nervous breakdown. I mean, the best way I can sum up the importance of this occasion is that there's one radio station there in Argentina that transmitted the game with the commentators speaking slowly, calmly, soothing music playing in the background with spots during the broadcast to explain how to get in contact with your cardiologist. No. That doesn't happen for usual games.
No. So there was instead of like sometimes we get fan TV commentary or various bits, there was a don't have a heart attack commentary.
Yes. Oh, yeah, exactly.
I put you on. Get you on that. Your dulcet tones.
No, I think I might have got a little bit too excited. I think with some of the football, and a lot of credit to the coaches, especially the River Plate coach Marcelo Gallardo, who's actually banned from this occasion. So he wasn't allowed in the stadium before the game. River Plate had all of their kits searched by police on entering the stadium. And I can only think they were looking to see if Gallardo had stowed away inside one of the kit bags, to try and give the talk. But no, he wasn't there. But he's an interesting coach. He was a terrific player in his day. And he's still a young coach, but he's got a lot of experience now with River Plate. He's been there for 4 years. That doesn't usually happen with South American football. And he keeps adding new things to his bow. And he surprised Boca with 3 centre backs, with a positional change, and with a very proactive approach to the game. River, in front of 100% of Boca's supporters, no visiting fans, River went out to do business, and it set the tone for a really pulsating 90 minutes. And
why no visiting fans?
Well, that's standard practice in Argentina. Argentine football doesn't have visiting fans. It's part of the security forces' response to a dreadful and deep-lying problem of fan violence. There were moves to try and get visiting fans for these games, but in the end they were overruled. And the club, well, the clubs not only do they have security considerations, they also think, you know what, if we don't have visiting fans, we don't need to have those 2,000 unsold seats in separation, so we can pack more in. So behind the security thing, there's also an economic motive for no visiting fans. Okay.
Tim, if I was to ask you to kind of bluntly sum up the traditional fabric of either club, what they represent, who they represent, upper class, middle class, lower class, one more successful than the other, one more popular than the other, even nationally across Argentina. Is there a kind of blunt stereotype that you could give me for River and Boca?
Yeah, it's huge, and it's very, very important. The content of the rivalry is very important. Both these sides grew up side by side in the working class docklands area of Buenos Aires, La Boca. Boca have stayed defiantly put, which makes them the representative of the sweat and the sacrifice of the working class. It's a cramped, claustrophobic area, the Boca. It's not particularly safe. And their stadium reflects this, because it's a cramped stadium where it's called La Bombonera, the chocolate box, because it just goes straight up. There's no space. So it's a very, very intimidating atmosphere, a wall of noise. River Plate have long since moved out to the snooty suburbs. It's huge wooded avenues, wide wooded avenues. The stadium reflects this. It's a huge concrete bowl with very wide corridors. So where Boca has no space, River is full of space. Now, they have so many fans, and this is more than 60% of the Argentine population, and the sociological surveys will tell you that there's almost no difference between the fan base of Boca and the fan base of River. But on the level of symbols, they're opposites. They're yin and yang. So Boca represent the people, and River represents the immigrant dream of moving out to the suburbs. And that's one of the reasons for the importance of this game, especially in South America, because this fault line, this haves versus have-nots, is present in the vast majority of South America's big derbies. I mean, the big rivalries in South America are usually not between regions, as in the case, say, between Real Madrid and Barcelona. They're inside cities, and this haves versus have-nots plays very big. So it means that the whole of South America can see itself reflected in the Boca versus River derby.
Okay, fantastically interesting. And no away goals, 2-2, so it's not like there's away goals for this final, this second leg upcoming on the 24th, to mark people's cards.
That's right. There's away goals at every other knockout round. Why not in the final? I'll tell you why. Because it's the big showpiece occasion. So if it's all level after 90 minutes, so if it's 0-0, 1-1, 2-2 or whatever, extra time. Now, usually extra time is dreadful for TV schedules, but in a big showpiece occasion like the final, bring it on. Hold that audience for another 30 minutes and maybe to penalties as well. I do hope it doesn't go to penalties, because someone is going to have to miss. Someone is going to have to be the villain. Yeah. And that's too much to live with. So hopefully we'll get a winner in the 90 or maybe 120. Yeah,
God, the pressure on these players, because, I mean, the next item, the fact that we're about to talk about a game from 1950 gives a sense of the fact that this will not be forgotten quickly, because who knows when they'll meet again in the final.
Yeah, and they'll never meet again unless there's a change in a two-legged home and away final, because from next year we're going to a one-off final in a neutral ground. So on a huge part of the tension of this occasion is a celebration. Now, if River Plate win, they get to celebrate in front of a stadium 100% packed of their own fans. That'll never happen again. If Boca win, it's the ultimate humiliation. You get to do the lap of honour in front of your deadly rivals. There
must be actually some security fears if Boca win.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sure there are, yes. And it's happened before in lesser competitions. Right. There was one occasion where the visiting team doing a lap of honour, the home side decided to turn the sprinklers on. So it was a rather wet lap of honour.
Okay. Brilliant stuff. Okay, so we'll look out for that for sure. That's the Copa Libertadores second leg on the 24th. I mean, I think the next time you're on, if we're talking to you after this, we will, instead of coming out with the South American commentator losing his mind, we will dig out some of that heart attack free zone commentary out of sheer interest.
Radio Colonia, look it up.
Okay.
It's terrific stuff.
Is it good, yeah?
Yes, it's good. Yeah.
You're just whispering in dulcet tones.
Very soothing. It's a little bit like, because there's no away fans, the two goals that River scored, there's just a few seconds there of deadly silence. You know, you don't get that roar at all when an important goal goes in. It's just deadly silence, and then straight away the Boca fans are singing again. But that silence is it's a silence that shouts very, very loudly indeed.
Silence on the radio can be a beautiful thing as well. So Brazil-Uruguay at the Emirates this Friday is a friendly, and I must say, I was vaguely aware of 1950, but I mean, where I became really aware of it was 4 years ago, I suppose now, in Brazil, around the Germany defeat, and the fact that this was kind of the worst defeat since then. It must have been referenced so many times. So we're talking about what was the, effectively, there was a round-robin format, it's changed now, but effectively the World Cup final. And not only a World Cup final, but a World Cup final in Rio, where Brazil just had to avoid defeat, and where Brazil took the lead, and then the impossible happened.
Yeah, although, I mean, from the perspective of now, it looks like a major upset. From the perspective of then, it wasn't quite as big. Remember, Brazil had never won the World Cup. And Brazil was, in terms of population, it was much, much smaller. It was less than half the population that it has today. Uruguay had never lost a World Cup match. The sides had played friendlies just before the World Cup, and Uruguay had held their own. They'd won one of those friendlies. So,
sorry to interrupt. I've told the listeners before your arrival that Brazil were hot favourites. They'd been the form team in the competition, and they'd beaten Uruguay 5-1 in the Copa America the year before.
Yeah, but they'd also just lost to them just before the World Cup.
Okay.
So there's swings and roundabouts with this one, and they were hot favourites. And look at the results going into this game. Brazil are just dispatched the other teams in that Final Four. They just dispatched Spain and Sweden with embarrassing ease. Now, I knew some of the players and the coach from that Brazil side in 1950, which was enormous privilege. And I know that this is nearly half a century afterwards that I got to know them.
Yeah.
They had never, ever been able to forget that game. The greatest thing that has happened to the reputation of those players is 2014. 7-1. Because that 7-1 now dwarfs what happened in 1950.
Yeah.
The 7-1 is, because remember, by the 7-1, you're talking of a country of 200 million that's won the World Cup 5 times. So the scale of the collapse against Germany means that now people can look back at 1950 with completely different eyes, because they were a magnificent team. I've just been reading a book called Soccer Revolution by Willie Meisel, who was a real mover and shaker in the world game. And he was writing in kind of 1954. And the praise that he has for that 1950 side, and he rates the Brazil 1950 side as better than the Hungarians of 1954, who were recognised as one of the great sides not to have won the World Cup. So there's been something of a reframing of that experience of 1950. It was deeply traumatic at the time, and this was Brazil hosting the World Cup. This was Brazil announcing itself as a nation of the future, and building the Maracanã, which the Maracanã, when you come out of the underground station, even today, and the Maracanã is extraordinary. But from the perspective of 1950, it must have just looked like some giant spaceship that's parked just to the north of the city centre. And this is the stage where Brazil are going to prove themselves. And before the game, the mayor of Rio makes a speech when he proclaims the team as world champions. It's been over the years. It's been a Brazilian vice. All the shouting and the brouhaha before, and then when you fall, it's a long, long way down. And those players were never, ever able to forget it. And the goalkeeper, Barbosa, who was held responsible for the vital goal, he was beaten at his near post for the goal that cost Brazil the cup, and he ended up burning the goalposts, setting fire to them. Because just to try and get rid of the hoodoo. The one I knew best was Zizinho, who was the best player in that World Cup. He was the idol of the young Pelé. And I remember him telling me that decades afterwards, people would point him out in the street and say, that's the man who made Brazil cry. So for all of his achievements, they all seem to be overshadowed by one unhappy 25-minute passage of a game, which was a great game in which, until Brazil took the lead, they played wonderfully, wonderfully well. And Zizinho explained to me that the problem was when they took the lead, because then it was almost as if he said that the team experienced a kind of collective pressure drop. It's like, mission accomplished. And they couldn't until they went 2-1 down, they couldn't get it back. But Uruguay were a very, very fine side in their own right. When 4 years later, essentially the same Uruguay side, they lost their first World Cup match ever in the semi-final against those great Hungarians in a match that went to extra time. When World Soccer Magazine was launched 6 years later, there was a double-page spread on that article, on that game, as the Hungary-Uruguay game, as the best game ever played. So don't underestimate the Uruguay of that time. They were a magnificent side, full of fine players. It was one of the greatest games I think probably ever played in football at that point, the 1950 final. And at least now, post 7-1, it can be looked back upon with less pain. Yeah, good. There's highlights of it on YouTube, actually, if people want to check it out. I hadn't realised that Uruguay were quite that good. Everything I've read just talks about the scale of the shock and everything else. And I saw that... one of my favourite things from that game is the two sets of players. That experience, that really bonded them. And they became firm friends. They used to meet up, pretty much every year. Wow. The Brazil players and the Uruguay players would have a reunion. Going through that 90 minutes had brought them so close. I always find that really touching. That for me is indicative of the power of football that we see so often but speak about so little, of its power to forge international friendships. Wow, that is lovely. I saw that O Mundo, the Brazilian newspaper, apparently printed an early edition on the day of the final containing a photograph of Brazil with the caption, "These are the world champions." And then rumour has it that the Uruguay captain bought as many copies as he could, laid them on his bathroom floor, and encouraged his teammates to urinate on them. Tell me that's true. I think it is, yes. Great. Zizinho, he was given, before the final, he was given a free, as a world champion, he was given a life free pass to Rio cinemas. I don't think he was ever able to use that. Wow. Brilliant stuff. I don't really have time to talk to you too much about the game on Friday. Maybe just one quick word on anything in particular we're looking out for. I mean, it's at the Emirates, so I presume money's involved. Yeah, and Uruguay will have Suarez and Cavani back for the first time since Uruguay beat Portugal in the World Cup. But they're five. Not only have they lost their goalkeeper, but their 5 first-choice centre-backs have all pulled out. So I think Uruguay have just been restricted to wandering down the streets of Montevideo, looking at anyone over 6 foot, saying, "Do you play centre-back?" and get them in at the last moment. So let's see if Brazil can take advantage of what is going to be a very, very makeshift Uruguay defence.
Yeah, okay. I was reading as well, Neymar making his 95th cap, aiming to score his 60th goal. In fairness, even I have to say, okay, that's not bad. I'll give him that. Listen, always a pleasure having you on. Thanks a million.
Cheers, thank you.
Tim Vickery there.
Off the ball on News Talk.
You thought it was a one-day deal, a week at most, but you were wrong. The Black Friday event is now on at appliancesdelivered.ie.